Now we're flying from Amsterdam to Berlin for part 2 of our Europe trip.
It's Belinda here from Be Making Joy. This is part 2 of our Europe 2025 trip. Part 1 was Amsterdam. If you haven't seen that video clip, it's linked here. And part 3 will be Barcelona, coming soon. And this is Berlin. Enjoy.
Of course, among the first things we see are pieces of the Berlin Wall. Our hotel was in the area that used to be no man's land. We seem to find Uniqlo stores everywhere we go. We're here for Dan to run the Berlin Marathon, so we check in with Marathon Tours and get our schedule. Nothing really starts until Thursday night, so Thursday morning we go catch a hop-on hop-off bus. And it starts to rain. But we got the front seat of the upper level. There will be better pictures later. The rest of the weekend was nice and sunny, but I kind of like my rainy pictures. They're painting lines. If this was happening at home, they would shut down the whole road. This is the television tower built for East Germany's television network in the late 1950s. Over 200 meters tall, still the tallest structure in Berlin. And the shape at the top is to remind us of the Sputnik satellites. Throughout the city there are these pipes, some blue, some pink, and it's because Berlin is built on a swamp. So when a construction company needs to lay a foundation, they first need to pump that groundwater out of the site and send it back to the river. This area used to be East Berlin, where the Soviet government put up a bunch of prefabricated apartments in the 70s. This is the longest remaining section of the Berlin Wall, 1.3 kilometers long, and with all the murals on it, it's now considered an art gallery. I feel like we're driving in circles. The city's mascot is a bear, and in 2001, 500 of these fiberglass bear statues were put around the city as a symbol of tolerance and peace. This is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe, which we will get a closer look at later. And the Brandenburg Gate, we come back on foot later. This building is so wild with all its weird angles. This is the Victory Column, built in 1873 to celebrate victory in the Franco-German War. It was moved to its current location in 1938. There's 250 steps inside, and you can pay to go up to the top. It leads into the Tiergarten, which I will take you for a walk through later. Now we're circling the walls of the Sioux. I love that gate. This broken chain sculpture, erected in 1987, represents how broken the city was with the wall between them, the east and west being so close and not able to touch. That was a long ride. Now it's time to go find some lunch. This lovely atrium is near our hotel and has a couple of cafes, restaurants, and a Lego store. Then we took a walk through the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. I like that they used the word murdered instead of killed, because over 6 million people were murdered in the Holocaust. Imagine what it must have been like being murdered into the concentration camps, and then your family members are taken this direction and that direction, and you never see them again. This is the Brandenburg Gate, completed in 1791, originally called the Peace Gate, which is ironic because when the Berlin Wall went up in 1961, it ran directly behind it. Now it's the finish line every year for the Berlin Marathon. After searching a long time, we found Dan's name on the participants' wall. Now it's time to line up to go pick up the race package. Participants only beyond this spot, so I gotta go around the corner and find a spot to wait for them. This is a mural of a previous race and a map of the route. Back to the hotel for some eating. And then in the morning, we get a private tour organized by Marathon Tours and Travel. Our tour guide was so very informative, although I'm not sure I'm going to remember very many of her stories. She had us stop at different spots and get out and have a look around. Our first stop is at the longest remaining section of the wall, 1.3 kilometers of arts and murals. The wall came down in 1989. The murals were painted in 1990, and this section was officially declared a monument in 1991. We're getting out here so we can examine the wall more closely. But I took a bunch of pictures of the river behind it first. This 5-meter high, 15 feet, concrete barrier was constructed almost overnight, August of 1961, to stop the East Germans from fleeing to the west. The wall was actually 2 parallel walls with a heavily guarded death strip in between. This is now such an important historical monument that there was an outcry when this hotel wanted a section of it removed to create their entrance. We now get out to walk around Museum Island, a UNESCO World Heritage Site featuring 5 different museums.
Everyone back on the bus now. We get out at Humboldt University to visit Beppelplatz Square, the square where on May 10th, 1933, 20,000 books were burned because they were deemed to be, quote unquote, un-German. Now there's a monument in the ground here, an empty library underground with space to hold 20,000 books to represent the 20,000 books lost, all that loss of knowledge and the loss of freedom of expression. Fencing is already being put up throughout the city in preparation for the marathon. I like the crosswalk lights. I later found out his name is Ampelman, and he originated in East Berlin and now exists throughout the city. Now we get off the bus on the north side of the Tiergarten, and we'll see some sights as we walk through, and we'll meet the bus on the other side. We'll pass the Chancellor Buildings and the Richtag, and we'll see that so much is already being set up for the marathon. And then make our way to the Brandenburg Gate.
So back in the days, this was actually a city entrance gate. This was not like a gate to keep people in or out. This was where they would collect taxes and people pay with them. So like a tax gate.
This is the Hotel Adlon, known of all things as being where Michael Jackson dangled his baby over a balcony. Then our guide took us through the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe, where she told us a lot of information. And then back on the bus, only a few things left to see. Checkpoint Charlie, which was the American gate through the wall. And the Bundesrat, which are the federal buildings. Throughout the city, these two parallel lines of brick mark where the wall used to be. The buildings are now sitting on top of it. After the tour ended, Dan and I took another walk on our own. We stopped to explore another wall exhibit, this one about how Hitler rose from being an elected official to the tyrant we know him as. All these slides across the bottom tell the story, and I took pictures of a lot of them, which turned out better than I expected. So I'll leave them in here. If you want to actually watch them, you can slow down your video and read some of the information. I will point out that these next few clips are about Jehovah's Witnesses. Then I took pictures of the ducky store because my daughter's a Jeep driver and has tons of ducks. If you know, you know. We didn't really stop to check this out. We are kind of getting tired of reading things. This might have been a fun place to visit, but we didn't. And we're back at Checkpoint Charlie, but didn't go up to the booth exactly. This is the story of how one family devised a zip line to get over the wall. There are still remaining sections of the wall here and there, and that line running throughout. On Saturday, we took a walk through the Tiergarten. Tiergarten translates to animal park, and it was originally the royal hunting grounds. There's no animals there now. It's a public garden park of 519 acres or 210 hectares. With walking paths in every direction and sculptures scattered throughout. Both the start and finish lines for the race are in this park, so much of it is already cordoned off. This cute little path leads us off to the rose garden, which was beautiful, but I'm sure is so much more beautiful in the summer. The ground throughout the park was covered in these nuts. In this section, just after the start line, a lot of people were doing some training laps. That will be a beautiful start to the race, leading off to the victory column. We can get over there by going down these stairs and through a tunnel. By a camera up there, he would have the best view of the start line. This city really does go all in to support the marathon. Then we went back through the tunnel and came out on the other side to walk through the other side of the park. Here we find the corrals where the racers will have to gather in the morning. They've been given their letters, sorted according to their expected speed. There's going to be 50,000 racers in total. There's also a roller skating race the same weekend. I think these guys were doing laps warming up. This building is the House of World Cultures, focusing on international contemporary arts. And then we have the Carillon, which is a bell tower with 68 bells connected to a keyboard. And there's now permanent theater tents in the park. We deduce that these lettered signs must be where you can arrange to meet your friends and family after the race. There is a 5-kilometer race on the day before the marathon. using that same famous finish line. And then we walked to the nearest yarn store called Yarn Over Berlin, and hubby went looking for a place to sit while I did some shopping. And here's where I found them when I came back out. And then we found the Ampelman souvenir store. There I bought a bag for my knitting. Sunday morning, time to go to the start line for the marathon. Here's a closer look at Ampelman. This time we took a different route into the park, and then we had to split up. Dan to go line up in his corral, and me to go find a spot near the start line. It sounds like they were having a lot of fun in those corrals. The first group start gun had already gone off before I got there. There were a fair number of people running in costume. And now my husband's group is getting revved up to go.
Four, three, two, one, go! 57 Meter Marathon 2025. Huge milestone for Lincoln. Enjoy the race. Did a full 1K. Enjoy your race. Thanks for running, Berlin. See you at the finish line.
I went back to the hotel room to knit a bit before going over to check out the action around the midpoint of the race. I never did find my husband out on the road, but I was tracking his progress on the app. Nonetheless, it was a lot of fun cheering people on. Then I walked over to the finish line. I never got close enough to see him cross the finish line, but the app says he did, so now I need to make my way over to where we said we'd meet. Here I am, I'm at the R. Did I mention there were 50,000 participants? I snapped this photo as we were walking back to the hotel. And Dan gave me his apple because he's allergic to apples. I had already bitten into it before I realized there was writing on it. Marathon Tours held a banquet that night at the Ritz, and then the next morning, Dan and I flew to Barcelona. And our pictures from that segment will be coming up in the next video.